I've been disgusted by you since our wedding night, my wife declared at our anniversary dinner. This whole marriage has been a lie. What she didn't know was that I'd been investigating her financial activities for months, and her affair with my business partner had just given me everything I needed for the perfect divorce. What Victoria discovered was that when you're married to a financial forensics specialist, every lie leaves a paper trail that leads straight back to the truth. My name is Atlas Sinclair, 33 years old, financial forensics specialist based in Miami, Florida. For the past 9 years, I've investigated corporate fraud, money laundering, and asset concealment for law firms, insurance companies, and federal agencies. When people try to hide money, manipulate financial records, or steal assets through complex schemes, I'm the one who traces their activities and builds the evidence that puts them in prison. My job requires meticulous attention to detail because financial criminals are sophisticated, and catching them means following digital breadcrumbs across multiple jurisdictions and financial institutions. These same skills for detecting deception and building ironclad cases would prove essential when I discovered that my own wife had been running a sophisticated embezzlement operation right under my nose. I've been married to Victoria Sinclair for 5 years. Victoria is 31 years old, works as a project manager for Meridian Construction, one of South Florida's largest commercial development firms. We met at a financial conference where Victoria was presenting about construction project budgeting, and I was speaking about forensic accounting in real estate transactions. She seemed intelligent, ambitious, and shared my interest in the intersection of finance and construction development. Victoria appeared to be the perfect partner for someone in my profession. She understood complex financial structures, appreciated the importance of detailed record keeping, and seemed to value honesty and transparency in both personal and professional relationships. Our conversations about work were stimulating, and I respected her expertise in managing multi-million-dollar construction budgets. For the first 3 years of our marriage, everything seemed ideal. Victoria's career was advancing steadily at Meridian Construction. My forensic consulting practice was growing, and we were building what appeared to be a successful life together based on shared professional values and personal compatibility. But about 18 months ago, I began noticing subtle changes in Victoria's behavior that triggered the same instincts I used to identify fraudulent activity in my professional investigations. Victoria became more secretive about her work activities, often taking phone calls in another room and becoming evasive when I asked about her projects. She started working longer hours but seemed stressed rather than energized by increased responsibilities. More concerning, Victoria's spending patterns changed significantly. She began making expensive purchases without discussing them with me, claimed she was receiving performance bonuses that never appeared in our joint accounts, and seemed to have access to cash that didn't correspond to her reported income. Victoria, your spending has increased a lot lately, I mentioned during one of our monthly budget reviews. Are you getting additional compensation that we should include in our financial planning? I've been getting project completion bonuses, she replied vaguely. The amounts vary depending on how projects perform, so it's hard to predict. But when I asked to see documentation of these bonuses for our tax planning, Victoria became defensive and claimed the paperwork was handled directly by Meridian's payroll department in ways that made it difficult for her to provide detailed records. As a forensic accountant, I knew that legitimate employment bonuses always generate clear documentation for tax purposes. Victoria's explanations for her increased spending didn't align with normal business practices. I also noticed that Victoria had become friendly with Marcus Webb, my business partner in our forensic consulting firm. Marcus and I had been partners for 4 years, building a successful practice that specialized in complex financial fraud investigations. Marcus handled client development and case management, while I focused on the technical analysis and evidence building. Victoria began mentioning Marcus frequently in conversation, asking about his cases, his travel schedule, and his personal life. When Marcus joined us for dinner or social events, Victoria seemed unusually interested in his work and much more animated than she typically was in social situations. Victoria seems to really enjoy Marcus's company, I observed to myself, though I initially attributed this to professional interest rather than personal attraction. But Victoria's interest in Marcus extended beyond casual social interaction. She began suggesting that we invite Marcus to more events, asked detailed questions about his schedule, and seemed disappointed when he couldn't join us for activities. 6 months ago, I made a decision that would fundamentally change my understanding of my marriage. I decided to conduct a discreet financial investigation of Victoria's activities, using the same techniques I employed in professional fraud investigations. I wasn't looking for evidence of infidelity initially. I was concerned about unexplained income and spending patterns that suggested possible financial irregularities that could affect our joint tax liability or expose us to legal problems. What I discovered was far more serious than personal financial mismanagement. Victoria had been systematically embezzling money from Meridian Construction for at least 2 years, using her position as project manager to manipulate vendor payments, inflate material costs, and divert funds into personal accounts that I'd never known existed. The embezzlement scheme was sophisticated and well executed. Victoria would approve payments to fake vendors, collect kickbacks from legitimate vendors who overcharged for materials, and manipulate project budgets to create slush funds that she could access without oversight. She'd stolen approximately $340,000 over 2 years, using the money to fund the expensive lifestyle changes I'd noticed while maintaining the appearance of legitimate employment income. But the financial fraud was only part of what I discovered. Victoria's bank records showed regular payments to a luxury apartment that she was renting downtown, restaurant charges for expensive dinners that I'd never attended, and travel expenses for trips that I'd never known about. Most damaging, Victoria's phone records and credit card statements showed a clear pattern of coordination with Marcus Webb. They were having frequent contact during business hours, meeting for lunches and dinners, when I thought Marcus was handling other cases and traveling together for what appeared to be romantic getaways, disguised as business trips. Victoria wasn't just embezzling money from her employer. She was using stolen funds to finance an affair with my business partner while maintaining our marriage as a cover for her criminal activities. I spent 3 months building a comprehensive case file documenting Victoria's embezzlement scheme and her affair with Marcus. I collected bank records, phone logs, travel receipts, vendor payment documentation, and photographic evidence of their meetings and trips together. As a forensic accountant, I knew that emotional reactions and confrontations rarely produce useful results when dealing with financial criminals. The most effective approach is to gather overwhelming evidence before revealing your knowledge, then use that evidence strategically to achieve the best possible outcome. I decided to wait for the right moment to confront Victoria with everything I'd discovered, preferably when she was most vulnerable and least able to deny or minimize her criminal activities. That moment came during our 5th wedding anniversary dinner at an upscale restaurant in South Beach. Victoria had suggested the celebration, though she'd seemed distracted and irritable throughout the planning process. During dinner, Victoria was unusually aggressive and confrontational, criticizing my work, complaining about our social life, and generally behaving in ways that seemed designed to provoke an argument. Atlas, I need to be honest about something, she said as we finished our main course. I've been thinking about our marriage, and I don't think this is working anymore. What specifically isn't working? I asked calmly. Everything. Our relationship, our compatibility, our future plans. I feel like we're completely wrong for each other. Victoria's criticism became increasingly personal and harsh, attacking my character, my career, and even my physical appearance in ways that seemed calculated to be maximally hurtful. Then she delivered the line that would end our marriage completely. I've been disgusted by you since our wedding night, she declared loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. This whole marriage has been a lie. I've been pretending to love you for 5 years because I felt trapped. The restaurant patrons around us were staring, and Victoria seemed to be enjoying the public humiliation she was inflicting on me. That's when I smiled. Victoria, thank you for being so honest about your feelings, I said calmly, pulling out my phone. I'm actually grateful that you've clarified your position so clearly. What do you mean? She asked, suddenly confused by my lack of emotional reaction. I mean that your confession about lying throughout our marriage is very helpful for the divorce proceedings that I'll be filing tomorrow. Victoria's expression shifted from anger to confusion. Divorce proceedings? Yes, I've been investigating your financial activities for the past 6 months, and I've discovered some very interesting patterns in your spending and income sources. I showed Victoria my phone, which displayed photos of her meeting with Marcus at the downtown apartment she'd been renting with embezzled money. I know about the $340,000 you've stolen from Meridian Construction. I know about your affair with Marcus. I know about the apartment, the trips, and every financial transaction you've made over the past 2 years. Victoria's face went completely white as she realized the scope of what I'd discovered. Atlas, I can explain everything. You don't need to explain anything. I have documentation for all of it. I pulled out a folder containing printouts of bank records, phone logs, and vendor payment irregularities that proved her embezzlement scheme. As a forensic accountant, I've built criminal cases against people who weren't nearly as careless as you've been about leaving evidence of their activities. Victoria stared at the documentation, realizing that her financial crimes had been thoroughly investigated by someone with professional expertise in detecting exactly the type of fraud she'd been committing. What? What are you going to do with this information? I'm going to file for divorce and seek full protection of our marital assets from your criminal activities. I'm also going to report your embezzlement to Meridian Construction and the appropriate law enforcement agencies. Atlas, please, we can work this out. I made mistakes, but I can fix this. Victoria, you didn't make mistakes. You committed felonies. For 2 years, you've been stealing money and lying to everyone around you while using our marriage as cover for criminal activity. I stood up from the table and placed money on the table to cover our dinner. This whole marriage has been a lie, I said, repeating her earlier words. You're absolutely right about that, but the person who's been lying isn't me. Victoria tried to follow me out of the restaurant, pleading for me to reconsider reporting her crimes and asking for opportunities to explain her behavior. Atlas, if you report this, it will destroy my career and send me to prison. Can't we handle this privately? Victoria, you've been committing financial crimes and adultery for years. The time for private handling ended when you decided to steal money and cheat on your husband. I drove home alone, leaving Victoria at the restaurant to consider the consequences of her criminal activities and marital betrayal. The next morning, I filed for divorce and provided my attorney with complete documentation of Victoria's embezzlement and affair. I also reported her crimes to Meridian Construction's executive management and to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Victoria was arrested at her office 3 days later on charges of embezzlement, money laundering, and wire fraud. Marcus was arrested the same day for conspiracy and receiving stolen property, since my investigation had revealed that he'd known about Victoria's embezzlement and had been helping her conceal the stolen money. The criminal investigation revealed that Victoria's scheme was even more extensive than I'd initially discovered. She'd stolen nearly $500,000 over 3 years and had been planning to flee the country with Marcus once they'd accumulated enough money to start a new life together. Victoria's plan had been to divorce me after cleaning out our joint accounts, then disappear with Marcus and the embezzled money to a country without extradition treaties with the United States. But my forensic investigation had traced every dollar she'd stolen and documented every aspect of her criminal conspiracy before she could complete her escape plan. During Victoria's trial, she attempted to claim that her embezzlement had been motivated by an abusive marriage and that she'd only stolen money to fund her escape from domestic violence. But my evidence showed that Victoria had been living a luxury lifestyle with stolen money while maintaining our marriage as a convenient cover story, not fleeing from abuse. The judge was not sympathetic to Victoria's attempted defense. Miss Sinclair, the evidence shows that you systematically stole money from your employer while conducting an affair with your husband's business partner. These actions demonstrate calculated criminal behavior, not desperation or self-defense. Victoria was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution to Meridian Construction. Marcus received 4 years for his role in the conspiracy and was permanently barred from practicing as a forensic accountant. The divorce was finalized while Victoria was in prison. She received no marital assets since all of her claimed contributions to our marriage had been funded by stolen money. Today, I run my forensic consulting practice independently and have rebuilt my professional reputation after the scandal of my partner's criminal activities. I've also met someone new, Sarah Chen, a federal prosecutor who specializes in white-collar crime.